Hello, my name is Bob Singleton, and I'm speaking about Gangs for God. I want to tell you today about three families, or three classifications of people, you might say. It's a metaphor. One was a nice family, and they went to church every week. The second did not go to church very often, and this family didn't like it much when they did go. The third guy was very likable, but he was full of trouble. Everybody had fun when they were with him, but there was always something going on. He had some bad habits, some addictions, and him and his girlfriend were living together but not married. Hopefully, she won't get pregnant until they're married, until they can afford it. But, all these people might be people of faith. I could see myself sitting with any of them to talk with them about God or worshiping with any of them wherever they might be. You see, I know we all have the same status before God. So it's good when we sit and talk, not just about God, but to Him. And He talks to us too. But sometimes church people look to the church for everything like this. They want to put it in the church bulletin. They want to try to get a lot of people involved. But that's not necessary. We don't need formal organization. We appreciate the encouragement and support of other people, but we don't need church oversight or approval like some might think. You can get your cell phone out and call somebody, and you can plan a get together. It's important to know this, you understand, because church can have the opposite effect from what it's supposed to have. Church attendance can, and sometimes does, cause a person to be less spiritual instead of more. Church can actually draw a person to lose intimacy with God. In fact, I can see how religion could drag people downhill and cause them to do worse instead of better. Consider a scenario I'll give you for these three families, and I'll embellish it because I want to speed up the progression of things, but just consider how things might get worse for the three families I mentioned. The first family, that church family. They go to church, they hear the sermons, they take everything in, but they neglect their own spirit as they agree with whatever the pastors say. In their heart, they sometimes disagree, but they silence their heart, listen with their ears, and just go along. They think it would be wrong to voice their disagreement. They don't want to be troublemakers, so they silence the stirrings of their heart. Mentally, they are going along, but their heart just is not in it. They're listening to the pastor talk, but as they do, they turn off what God is speaking to their heart. So pretty soon they go into a new mode. They quit going to church. They become like the second family in my example. Still a nice family, and they still love God and God still loves them. Don't get that wrong. They think about God. They've got a history with the church. They recall a Bible story now and then and think about the meaning of it. And they see the hand of God in the beauty of nature. And they have a personal sort of worship and connection to God. Their faith is not active, though. Their concept of the action part of faith happens at church, and it's in conflict with the private part of faith, which is internal. So they don't do anything with their faith. It's inoperable. They love God and He loves them, but they don't do what Jesus said to do, and they don't talk about the things that Jesus said we are to teach. To them, that would be preaching, and it would be corrective and ugly. It would be judgmental. So they admire God, but they don't see enough good news in His message to really want to share it. They're not motivated that way. Eventually, their spirit just becomes dull. Their connection to God, which they think is good, dwindles. Due to their poor spiritual base, life gets worse. Their kids do seem okay, and it seems, but by the time you get down to their grandchildren, things are notably worse. It might be disrespect, might be anger and bad attitudes, it might be drug use. Whatever it is, relationships start to sour a little bit, and this family is now the third type I mentioned. But all these patterns can be reversed, not by struggle and hard work, not by diligent effort to be good and live a good life, but by faith in the one who created and owns the universe. God came to us once, and he lived among us. His name in his language was Yeshua. In our language, it's Jesus. He left this world, but he promised that he would send his Spirit to be in everyone that believes in him. It's just that simple. We get from God what we believe he is willing to give us. If we believe God is cold and distant, he will be that to us. If we believe in many gods, there will be many gods for those who think that. We call them angels or demons, but you can worship them if you decide to. If we believe God is disappointed in us or disgusted with us, our lives are going to reflect that. But if we believe that God loves us so much that he came to earth as a man who loved even his enemies, he will be loving, supporting, and merciful to us. If we believe that the creator of the universe came to us as a man and in a man, he will come to be in us as well. We can have it any way we choose. But let me give you some Bible examples. If you look at your New Testament, you'll see the Pharisees. These guys were Bible guys and scholars. They studied their Bible, they focused on the temple, they focused on the very laws and religion of God, but they got wrapped up in the institution. For them, it was all about religion, but they didn't take it personal. They didn't take it to their heart. The man who was the greatest prophet the world has ever known, the man who was God incarnate himself, came and lived among them, and they didn't know him when they saw him. In fact, they became some of his worst enemies. Or we can look at Judas, the man who lived and walked with Jesus for 3.5 years, the man who Jesus asked to carry his money. He must have focused more on the work that he had to do, though, than his time alone with God. He ended up ratting Jesus out to the priests that wanted to kill him. This man, who was part of the inner workings of the work of God on earth, and he was part of the inner circle of the closest people to God, but did not really know him, and in fact betrayed him. But now consider some different type of examples. Consider Abraham and Nimrod. See, there was a time when Nimrod was getting everybody organized. They're making bricks to build a huge tower to heaven. But Abraham went off alone, as God told him to do, and Abraham became the chosen man of God instead of Nimrod. He became a man of faith through whom all the nations of the world are to be blessed. See, I say these things not to demean our churches or the goodwill people in them, but to emphasize the fact that spirituality is a private thing and a personal pursuit. So let's go on and consider the Apostle Paul. He also went away from the religious crowd. He met, for example, with Lydia and the ladies who went to pray by the river, and in various situations wherever he could. But he didn't just go meet with the established group of guys. The church at Jerusalem consisted of the original apostles and those that had lived with and followed Jesus as his disciples for all that time. Paul didn't go with them. He went out and started his own groups. Jesus did something like that too. His time was spent mostly up in Galilee, 70 miles from the religious hub of Jerusalem and the temple. When he was at the temple, he actually made a whip out of leather straps and went into the temple and chased a lot of people out. Now, he didn't fit into the standard religious mode. Jesus and Paul now did go to the temple and the synagogues, and they learned at those places when they were young. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with going to the established churches and institutions. Many people do that. And you can get established that way, but you can also do it a different way when you need to, and that's what I'm trying to show you. You become a man of God by pursuing, honoring, and coming to know God, and by interaction with other people. That's part of it, but sometimes it happens at church and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm setting out to encourage this dream. If you're drawn to it, here's what we have to do. We have got to get out of this churchy, separatist mindset. It's too stiff, too controlled, and too exclusive. It causes people to avoid church, and then, too often, they avoid God too. We've got to get out of this idea that God can be constrained and contained within a church, because as long as we think that way, God won't be much a part of our society. We can learn about God on the streets. We can learn about Him at home. We can learn about Him by watching TV or connecting on the internet. We can learn about Him from sermons at church. But we need to be discerning. Some of what we're taught will be good and some will not. It's time, though, to break the image that says you become a man of God by church activity. Well, some of you might like what I'm saying, but this is a whole new way of thinking for you as well as it is for me. It might feel awkward to go meet with somebody to pray and worship God in the park or at a little table somewhere. But you have a calling. Pursue it. Let's just not be sterile and religious, and don't be cloistered in church. Let's pursue God, each in his own way, but together, united in our love of truth and to honor God. This is how Jesus, Paul, and Abraham did it. If you want me involved, contact me. I'll meet with you. I'll worship with you. I'll encourage you however I can. Email me at gangsforgod@gmail.com. That's gangsfor, F-O-R, God@gmail.com. You can also reach me on Facebook. I am Bob Singleton from Arvada, Colorado.